Welcome to the SRS Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron J. Babyar, and I'm the Director of Support Raising Solutions. Whether you are a new ministry worker or a veteran looking to increase your competence and confidence, Support Raising Solutions seeks to bless you in your quest to be a spiritually healthy, vision-driven, and fully funded Great Commission worker. My guest today is MacGregor Magruder, and he is a friend that I've had the opportunity to get to know over the past few years. The first time that MacGregor, I think you and I were together, was back when you lived in Nairobi, Kenya. Is that correct?
That's correct, Aaron.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for getting online with me. And actually, at the time that we're talking, you are in, we'll just say an island in the South Pacific and leave it at that. If you want to be more specific than I am, that's fine. But I know that sometimes God has led you into closed countries, and so I'm not sure what should be shared or shouldn't be shared. What can you tell the listener?
So, Aaron, it's great to be here. We are serving in a creative access country in Southeast Asia region, and it's a great opportunity to do some kingdom work, and we're excited to be here, but we try to keep things a little bit careful on how much we share openly in order to not jeopardize our visa status.
Sure. Before we jump into our topic today, it'd be good just to hear a little bit more about your history. I've always found your personal history, your work history, a little fascinating as far as what you were doing prior to having a clear call into missions. So let's just start there, but back me up to, if you want to speak of the organization you're with, you may, you don't have to, but back me up to at least some of the things that were happening when you felt God just getting involved in your life in a way where it eventually led to you feeling like you were going to be a part of some Great Commission work.
Sure. In college, I studied business administration. I grew up in the Gulf South, Louisiana, Texas region. And obviously, most people coming out of business and engineering school in that region are going to be working in the petrochemical industry in some capacity. So I launched right out into that side of things, doing engineering sales, had a great career, great family life. Everything was progressing very well towards the goals we had as a family at that time. And God just started picking at our hearts a bit about what the point of our daily labor was and how we were using our resources that he had been blessing us with. And were we doing that in a way that was kingdom building? And my wife and I came to the ultimate conclusion that it wasn't. And we made the mistake of getting involved with some things like Habitat for Humanity projects, and then going on short-term mission trips into Central America. And before you knew it, it was clear that God was calling us towards full-time kingdom building work. And thankfully, an organization took a chance on us with no mission background, no theological training officially in any capacity, and launched us out into Central Africa doing water well projects around church plants. And that's been another 12 years of ministry, and our 11th year living overseas, full-time ministry now.
Wow. How long were you in the petro field?
That was 13 years in the petrochemical industry.
Wow.
Beating the streets, running the roads, and offshore oil rigs, and lots of really fun and amazing stuff. But at the end of the day, just not where God wanted us to be for his purposes.
Right. So you're an LSU Tiger, am I right?
I am. That's a true story. True, not fake news. Yeah.
I remember being in your house back when you lived in Nairobi and walking in and seeing some LSU stuff, and I went, "Oh man, you can take the boy out of Louisiana, but you can't take Louisiana out of the boy."
and lately we can't seem to beat Alabama. So yeah.
I don't think anybody can, but that's another story entirely. Well, again, let's just continue to get to know you just a little bit more. Share with everyone just briefly a little bit about your family. You don't have to share names if you don't want to. If you want to share ages or share what you feel comfortable, but you are a family man, and you are someone who changed careers from a very successful non-vocational ministry career into a vocational ministry career. You are someone that I know who went from not living on support at all and being in petrochemical. I'm sure you had a very good paycheck, but then all of a sudden you moved into raising and living off full support, and you had 3 kids, if I recall. So tell us a little bit about your family and a little bit about that transition, please.
Sure. Yeah, we've happily married to one wife, as we say overseas, and 3 teenagers, one 18, one 17, and one 16 currently. 2 of those still live at home with us, and one is in University, California Baptist. And leaving a very strong career with a solid income and benefits to join ministry to begin with was a challenge in my own heart of processing. So God did a lot of work with me in preparation for that, unknowing to me. So I didn't mention earlier, but I was trained Crown Financial Ministries counselor and leader, small group leader through our home church. And through that process, I didn't realize God was putting us in position to serve. He was getting us totally debt-free. He was helping us to become generous givers of the resources he was blessing us with, and put us into a frame of mind where eventually we would be going to people in similar life phase, but as receivers instead of, as the goers instead of the senders. When we first left the secular world for ministry, it was in a paid position. So that was an easier transition. And maybe in a way, God knew at that time, if you told me you were going to leave this upper income opportunity to now go raise support to live in the middle of Africa, I would have probably been more hesitant to accept that calling.
You might have been listening, but you might not have wanted to hear it quite yet at that point.
Yeah, amen. So I had a great opportunity, a gateway drug, so to speak, of an organization who had professional fundraisers and then provided funding for those of us who were goers. Later on, I was challenged to join that. And at that time, I turned the opportunity down simply because of the idea of raising support. The person who was recruiting me snuck in a copy of the God Ask. I was in Egypt working on some projects, had a lot of extra time on my hand in the evenings, and the God Ask really put me in position to have the frame of heart and the right mindset to approach raising support for the first time for our family in the field. Now, at the time, 3 children in private international school, living in a high cost of living environment, and counting the cost was very daunting. Yeah. I was honestly still, even though I felt like it was the right thing to do, I was still fearful of the idea of having to raise such a substantial amount of personal support and ministry expense support in one go. And from the field, living in the field, going back to the United States for this fundraising push, in a timely manner, that I'm not leaving my family without me for an extended period. Most organizations are raising support in 4 to 8 up to 12 months. So obviously that was not in the cards for our situation as a family. We didn't want to come off the field in order to do it. So I had a serious challenge ahead of me and had to rely heavily on God, heavily on training of fellow coworkers who had been successful field support raisers. Yeah. And it was an amazing experience. I had no idea that the real blessing in the process is the ministry doors that it opens with those that I'm inviting into partnership with me. I've been absolutely blown away at how much opportunity I now have to have intimate, deep relationships with people that I thought I had intimate relationships with. But now that there was also a fiduciary depth to that relationship, the needs, the prayer needs, the openness about struggles and trouble, it's very much a pastoral care role that you have as a support raiser with your sending partners. It's really remarkable. I had no idea that was coming, and it has been a blessing
That's actually, we've taken that's come up a time and again in some of our podcasts, just the high honor that it is to, you think you're inviting somebody to partner with you in ministry, and you are, but then you end up, God just opens some things up with some intimacy in a way that you actually get to love on and pastorally process things with people in their life. And that's wonderful that was true of you as well, because a lot of times I think support raisers aren't anticipating that, and then all of a sudden it happens, and they're like, "Wait a minute!" So that's great. That's great. Well, continue to tell us a little bit too about your a little bit more about your family, if you will, and then we're going to move into kind of our topic.
Yeah, just the world of teenagers. I've got a wonderful wife who's just incredibly open to experiences and challenges and discovering cultures and people, and just willing and able and excited to be on this ride. And honestly, she probably had to push me into certain areas of it initially, where we were hearing God, but I was still counting the cost and doing the checklist. And she was just saying, let's go, let's jump out this airplane, let's go.
Yeah.
So that has been a huge blessing. We are, equally yoked in it, and that's huge. I'm so thankful that God had matched us together 20 plus years ago, way before we knew Mission was of interest to either of us. Yeah, 3 teenagers. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, getting to know Ashley just a little bit, you didn't drag her at all into what you're doing. She might have been a little bit ahead of you on saying, "Come on, honey, we're going international."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the 3 teenagers, they've spent most of their life overseas now, and I think it has been hugely enriching to them. Just amazing opportunity. Still teenagers, still do silly and goofy and brain developed things, but it's been wonderful for the whole family.
Wonderful. Well, the main topic today, I mean, I just love you and enjoy hearing about your story. I always do, and I always learn little stuff extra. So thanks for being open like that. But yeah, our focus, at least for the sake of this podcast, is really just to talk about financial stress. And for the listener, really, we're not talking so much about people that are in process of raising their support for the first time. I mean, certainly that's applicable in some of it, but Mac, you've been able to help train and oversee and supervise just a variety of different missions leaders over the years. And I know just from talking with you and also some things that you've written, that you've been able to pick on some different causes, if you will, of financial stress. And it's not just the simple thing of, well, they're not making enough money. I mean, that can be there, and certainly, but then there can be some causations in all of that. And so from that standpoint, that's one of the reasons I wanted to invite you on today, is just to kind of talk about, what are some of those causations? I don't know which one of those words actually work best, but of financial stress, particularly for people that are living overseas, but not limited to that. And then also, what some of the tangible ways that somebody can look to even take, their own personal assessment of their financial health. Because a lot of people, that financial health idea is, well, that's not why they got into ministry, as you well know. They didn't get into ministry to make money or to think about money all the time. And yet, man, those can be some pretty good indicators, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Most missionaries that we meet have the biblical training background, right? They've been to seminary. They didn't go to business school or take finance classes or study economics. Mm-hmm. So finances in general are a taboo subject in most families. Nobody wants to talk about it. People don't want to get into it. You see the popularity of folks like Dave Ramsey and Crown Financial Ministries, Compass Ministries. They have a whole world of influence where they're trying to bring those basic skills to people in the U.S. So you can imagine it's even more so in the mission field component of stuff, where people just didn't have the background or training, and they're far from home. They're support may not be where it needs to be, or they don't even know that it's not where it needs to be because they've never really done a budget or prepared, things like that in a true way to understand what their needs are to be healthy in the field for the long term. We see lots of people who come for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they have to roll things up and head back because they didn't come truly understanding what it would take to live a healthy lifestyle today in this modern era at the field level. It's a different day than 100 years ago when you packed on a ship and you brought your coffin with you and you lived in a mud hut. That is there are missionaries who can still do that, and they are amazing champions, but most people are not prepared for that hardship coming from the luxury within, comparison, the luxury lifestyles that they've had in the United States. Even the poorest people in the United States are still considered rich on the world stage. Right. So it's a very different reality, I think, if that answers your question.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you're enjoying these podcasts and they're hitting on topics that you love, consider following Support Raising Solutions on social media for everyday biblical and practical support raising advice as you're in the process of raising your support. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/support raising solutions and on Twitter at support raising.
Right. So let's talk more about that financial stress, that whole idea of, what happened or what's happening or what's causing that, because any number of things can bring some stress upon the missions leader. And it's not necessarily that, will it happen or not? Some of these things are probably going to happen, or they'll happen if they're not intentionally avoided. But there are some kind of bigger picture things that can really bring some stress to the finances of a missions leader. What are some of those things that you've noticed, Mac?
Sure. Yeah, I'd say in the time I've been overseeing non-support raisers and support raisers, it's kind of irrelevant what side of the world they're coming from in terms of the funding. But financial stress in general, it can be caused by a combination of rising expenses, falling support, mismanagement, which would be just poor spending and saving habits, or even just an unhealthy mentality about things. So it's like a poverty mentality, or even now we see the rise of prosperity gospel. So people just feel like they deserve it and they're just going to spend it without really processing what their income and outflow is.
Okay. Just from a personal point of view, my wife and I have said, and I probably said a lot over the years, that one of the best things that happened to us is when we were in a ministry situation and we were required to go through a Financial Peace University thing. And I'll be honest, we bucked. We didn't want anything to do with it. That's because we needed it. Because we were guilty of what you called mismanagement. We had very poor spending and saving habits, very, very poor. And it was a good 7 or 8 or so years into marriage before that was somewhat required of us. It was required of everybody within the organization that we were working with. And I look back on it now actually rather fondly and saying that was the best marital counseling we ever had because we were avoiding some of our mismanagement issues that were causing many other issues. And we were living stateside. I'm sure you've seen that internationally, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I will give no plug for any particular one of these type of courses, but whether it's coming from a secular common sense perspective, the way your grandmother used to do it, or the biblical financial studies of the way God lays things out in the Bible related to care and stewardship of resources, it is unbelievably helpful and important. And it's something I give as gifts, different ones to different people, depending on where they're coming from theologically. And I just, anybody getting married, that's an easy wedding gift for me to give somebody is a subscription to one of these courses. It's huge. I mean, you see the statistics of marriage strife and communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
And money are just huge. And it's lots of time communication about money because people grow up in families where you don't talk about it. You don't even know what your father's job is or what he makes or how y'all manage money. So it's just not something people learn. So yeah,
Right.
not to get off on a tangent, but I'm with you, man. It's huge, hugely important. Yeah.
That's the point of it, because you and I both know that one of the main reasons that people leave Great Commission focused ministry, even though they might clearly still feel called to it, but it's finances. It's finances and it's relationships. So those are the two big things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Relationships internally with your organization and with people you're serving, and the funding. And,
Yeah.
And the funding may be fully sufficient. You're just mismanaging those resources.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily that you don't have enough support. Yeah.
Let's talk more about what that looks like. So you talked about kind of some of the big picture financial stress like indicators, but let's give some examples of somebody that's, they're laboring in the field of ministry, so to speak. And there's just some things that are kind of happening that you might go, hey, that might be a yellow flag, or might even be a red flag. Like, what are some of the things that if someone's wondering whether or not, their financial health is actually doing so well or not, and it's affecting their family and or their ministry, what would some of those things look like?
Sure. Yeah, I would say there's probably 3 different major categories on how to observe, if you're a leader, how to observe people in your own organization. This is stuff that I do internally, that I talk to team leaders about, and I even do just as a personal outreach to other missionaries in my community that I engage with, because I have this background of the financial health concern, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the easy kind of things are just looking at these, just kind of the obvious signs that you see in conversation or in a team meeting, or just observing people around you on your own team or outside. But you might notice that a team member is avoiding or not participating in kind of optional or social team events, get-togethers for meals. Hey, we're running out to dinner. Do you want to join us? And, they hang back a lot from that. It may not be a financial issue, but it could be a fact that that could be a area where they feel like they don't have the extra resources to participate in those things. Right. It could be something where the spouse of a team member, or children most often, right? Kids out of the mouth of children is truth, whatever the expression is. Yeah. But you will start to hear them talking about being poor, or we can't afford that, or we don't have the money to do that. So that's something you want to, your ears should perk up and say, hey, this is maybe a conversation we should get into.
It's never a healthy sign when kids have a poverty mentality of, well, we're in mission, so we can't do anything fun, right?
Right. And it's very different.
Red light.
It's a different language, right? It's not a good stewardship language. Like, well, we don't think that's a good use of our funds. It's we can't afford that, or we don't have the money to do that. It's a different type of way of saying that we can't participate in this for some reason.
Good point.
Yeah. Or, your staff might not want to be in a conversation about funding, about their MPD. That's a sign that there's some stress there, that they don't feel comfortable having that conversation, especially if you're in an authority to talk about that. Yeah. So that would be an area you'd want to.
I was just going to say, when that's happened, because you've just been around the block with this a little bit more, and I've been blessed to spend time internationally, but I haven't lived internationally like what you have, and overseeing staff while living overseas. When that happens, is that something where there's like a clear avoidance, or is it a bit of an emotional reaction when you talk about finances? And obviously we want the listener to be, doing some self-assessment here, but that irritability that you're talking about, so to speak, when they're not wanting to engage in conversations, like, I guess, give me an example, if you would. Obviously leave the guilty, leave their names out of it, but what has that looked like for you?
Yeah, so there's been instances where you're having a general open conversation in front of other people about MPD or somebody's support level, whatever it is, and they may have just like a sheepish attitude about it. Well, that may not be a warning sign, but it may just be something like, okay, this person's not comfortable talking about it in public, so let's bring it to a more private conversation. Now, hey, John, I just want to, follow up with you. You seemed uncomfortable. Is there something you want to talk about, or is it just you didn't grow up, feeling free to talk about money, and so I don't want to put you on the spot? As opposed to maybe where they're clearly like, I don't want to talk about that, and it's a very much of a clear kind of wall going up. That would be something I would be more concerned about, and you just have to judge that. And later I'll talk about getting into the real nuts and bolts of the science of saying, okay, your support is too low. We'll see that later. Right now, I'm just mentioning the general observation.
So
things that
somebody's
are
thinking about themselves. If somebody's thinking about themselves and they're realizing they never want to have that conversation with anybody because it makes them uncomfortable, that should be a warning flag to them.
I personally would see that as a warning flag, because you, especially living in ministry and community and relying on team members who are now your family is thousands of miles away. These people you are serving with are your new family. And so you should be able to be open. You don't have to talk about what your retirement account looks like, your 403B balance, and things like that. But in terms of just personal support, budget, these are your people. These are the people who love you, who are praying for you. Yes, you're having conflict with them, I'm sure. But they're the ones who are standing in the gap on the front lines, doing the kingdom work, fighting the enemy. And the finances shouldn't be a stumbling block in that relationship. And if it is, it could just be a sign of an unhealthy understanding, but it could also be a sign that there's real stress behind the scenes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I think that really makes sense. Please continue.
Yeah, I'd say I'd also look for just signs of irritability between a couple or a family. If everybody at a team meeting's talking about a team retreat planning time and people are throwing out ideas, but they seem to be, obviously, the wife's interested and the husband's kind of shutting the conversation down a little bit, or we'll talk about that later. I would say that could be a sign of something happening internally that needs to be dealt with, that, you could come alongside them, or they themselves could be looking towards hey, you know what, we need to reach out and perhaps consider some coaching or some even counseling or taking one of these course type things.
Okay.
Yeah, you might definitely notice sarcastic comments, right? Like, I have a different way of managing money than a team member does. I need to be careful about saying something sarcastic about how somebody else is choosing to steward their resources.
Okay.
So it could be the way they do a visa run. If you live in a location where you have to make a visa run, maybe a family who's really strong in support is choosing to go to a nicer visa run location and make it a long weekend. And I'm feeling some financial stress, so I'm critical of their stewardship, not appreciating that opportunity for them may be soul care, may be a great chance for their family to decompress. And then internally saying to myself, hey, I've got an unhealthy or a poverty mentality about this situation.
Yeah, that's a great point. That actually came up when I was interviewing somebody else in a closed country a while back. They were on the other end of that. They were the missionaries that were fully funded, and they felt that tension from some of their, I guess, friends that were in the field, different organizations and things, where they kind of felt like they needed to hide that they had planned a good trip for their family. And not that it was like the super expensive, luxurious thing, but because they were kind of going to a nicer place, it really affected the relationships. And it really wasn't so much that they were doing something wrong. It wasn't like this exorbitant trip or anything like that, but it was that their friends were pretty severely underfunded, and they were, I guess, I hate to use the term jealous, but yeah, they were jealous and upset that they could kind of have a nice thing. So if that's yourself and you're kind of finding yourself struggling with some jealousy because other people are are doing what might be a pretty normal, good, visa run or time with their family or whatever else, then the problem might not be them. It might be your perspective on finances. Is that kind of what you're saying, Mac?
Yeah, absolutely. So it could be spending on quality products, buying new tires for your ministry vehicle before they're totally, bald and flat, eating out too often, the type of vehicle you're purchasing within reason. So, there's a balance between the poverty mentality and a prosperity gospel mentality, where you are doing good stewardship, good self-care. You're, as a fully funded person, part of the desire of your ministry partners is that your family is healthy. And that might mean for your family these long, visa run weekend in a location of safe security and good food and working internet. And, they are expecting that. Now, I think no donor wants to see that every weekend you're on the beach in Thailand, with a Mai Tai in your hand, right? Like it's a balance of good stewardship and the successful long run. If you're only there for 3 years, well, never go on a vacation.
Okay.
If you want to be in the field for 20 years, you can't work in a secular job and never take a vacation. Why would you also do the same thing as a mission worker in a highly stressful environment, So that's kind of the.
By the way, I have a little term for that. I'm not the only one that has that, but I call that a Messiah complex. Where you're not absolutely certain that you aren't Jesus 2.0. You wouldn't admit it out loud to anybody, but you're trying to be Jesus / Superman and never need a break. And meanwhile, you're grinding. You're not thriving. Your family's not thriving. You need to take a break, but you can't see reality. But that's a whole nother. That's not the focus of this podcast.
Right.
That's a great example. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. Any other potential financial signs of stress that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we touched on, not utilizing your vacation or your furlough time because of financial reasons, which may be because of financial reasons. Right. Delaying needed medical care, people who are not pursuing medical care that they need or preventative medical care. I think that should be a flag to be observed internally or externally as a team member or a leader.
I'll just cut to the chase on that one. Go to the dentist. Yeah. You need to go to the dentist.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there seems to be things that you can tell, especially when one of this list of items is alone, it's kind of like that's something. But if you start to notice multiple areas where there's a sign plus that sign plus that sign, then it's time to engage. Either self-engage with somebody who can coach you or work with you on it, or as a leader, grab them, pull them aside, and start to help connect them with resources. If that's not your core competency, but you're noticing these issues in somebody, help them get connected. Some people might be, go ahead.
I was just saying, these are great because the odds are that people listening to this, particularly if they've been on the field for a while, they're probably either looking in the mirror or they're realizing some things about loved team members of theirs that are showing some of these signs that in reality, it doesn't mean these people are disqualified from ministry. It doesn't mean that they're not doing great in what God has called them to do, but they're having some financial stress. There's something that needs to be addressed. And so these are very practical examples you're bringing. I appreciate it. So it seems like you got more. Keep going, man. This is great.
Yeah, sorry. So I would even say, hesitation to spend money on legitimate ministry expenses, especially if you are fully funded. If you're feeling this kind of hesitation to spend, God has provided the resources. This will further the kingdom, but you're still feeling a internal check on spending. Maybe it is God saying, hey, I want you to hold that for the next opportunity, but it could simply be just a poor internal clock when it comes to moving the gospel forward for being too conservative in a particular setting. And then the last thing I'd probably mention is making housing or schooling decisions based on finances. doing something, there's nothing against homeschooling. Homeschooling is amazing. But if you notice you want to homeschool, and that because of finances, and it would remove your wife from the ability to do ministry that is fulfilling to her and would be extremely beneficial to the kingdom.
Yeah.
Hey, let's pray about this, and God will deliver the funder that you need for the missionary school that's in your area. So it could be an area where absolutely homeschooling is the only way to go. Your wife is absolutely called to that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally legit.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
as one different podcast guest said, I can't remember what their amount was. We'll say it was $30,000 US. I'm not sure what it was exactly, but he said, we began to realize that by, we love our kids, we see them all the time, but by having them go to an international school in our area, it was going to cost us $30,000 US. And what that meant is an additional full-time worker, because my wife's amazing and she can do a lot of work for the kingdom that partners with me in what I'm doing. And isn't that worth a secondary full-time, fully funded person for just an extra $30,000? That was part of their filter that they went through in deciding to put their kids in an international school, even though they came home at night. And again, I'm with you. Yeah, there are times and there are people where homeschool is absolutely the best thing. But there are other times when people are doing homeschool strictly out of a financial decision, even though they're living as missionaries. And that might not be thriving at the level for what they're called to.
Right. And that is, I want to be very clear about that. In no way is this an anti-homeschooling measurement that I observe. It's simply if it's actually a detriment to the kingdom, and it's only because of finances.
I'm pretty much only anti-homeschool. Yeah. Kids aren't learning to read, so
edit that out.
Let's tell you what. Let's talk a way about another way of identifying financial stress to yourself by even just asking yourself, or even asking your spouse some soft questions, just some good questions that you can ask of yourself as you're kind of taking your own temperature of whether or not you have a fever, so to speak, when it comes to your financial stress.
Okay. Yeah, great. I would say, there's a kind of a small group of things you could do as a check on your spirit, particularly if you're married. I would say get together with your wife or husband in a setting where you can be undisturbed, and really just kind of pray and process and think through this and ask yourself these questions. Are you feeling financial pressure right now? And if the answer to that is yes, then try to identify, well, why is that? Okay, is it we don't feel like enough money is coming in, or is it we feel like too much is going out? Because it's really two different things. There's plenty of people who are making massive amounts of money and are still absolutely dead broke. Their debts are higher than their incomes. There's plenty of people who are not making a lot of money and doing just absolutely fine because they've controlled their spending, but there's also unhealthy sides to both of those things. You can be too miserly and too just wasteful. But, if you're feeling that pressure, then let's start to think about what are the reasons.
Okay.
That could then trigger the idea where you say, okay, well, you know what? I don't know anything about personal finance. I don't know how to manage my money. I don't know if I have too little coming in or if I'm spending too much. I don't know I don't even know what my average electricity bill is. So it could be a case where you say, I just need coaching. I need help. I need to reach out to my organization, to our care department, or to my home church. Lots of home churches now have an executive pastor who's kind of like an MBA type guy who runs the books. Well, that if you've got a sending church that's got a handful of pastors there, surely somebody is able to connect you with somebody in the church who is a good steward or is a financial planner and all that. And it doesn't need to be that you're going to these folks and saying, plan my whole life, but just somebody to help coach you through what it might look like to create a budget, or to even find websites like the Dave Ramsey and the Crown Financial Ministry type thing.
Sounds like for some people that might be pretty hard to do that. Just to,
Yes,
because
admit,
there's
right?
really a sense of humility of saying, I don't have it all figured out when it comes to my finances. And here I am, a missionary. I should have all this figured. I shouldn't have to even think about my money. I'm serving God. And wow, I'm just imagining for some people that might be a bit of a breakthrough just to have to swallow that humble, pie, so to speak, of acknowledging just exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, but absolutely. But what I would say is, again, going back to your ministry partners, right? They love you. They probably honestly don't even know what organization you're with. They don't know what you're doing day to day, even though you feel like you're doing great newsletters that explains everything. At the end of the day, they love you. They trust you. They believe you're doing God's work. And if you are reaching out in a need, this is something they feel like, hey, look, I'm participating in the kingdom by walking alongside Aaron and coaching him,
That's so
in
true.
this area.
I'm laughing because I have a friend who spends quite a bit of time in Honduras, and he told me a couple of his partners keep asking him about Guatemala.
Right.
I'm never in Guatemala. Why do they keep asking me that? But I mean, they love him. They pray for him. They financially support him. But not all people are truly reading every word from your newsletters and paying attention. So that just kind of struck me as funny. You brought that up.
Yeah. Yes, I have not drilled a water well in 6 years. And just this summer, when I was home doing my kind of, thanking donors face to face and doing touch points, the number of people who asked me, how many wells did you do this year? And you got any pictures of, the water spraying out and the kids dancing around? It's like, bro, yeah, like, and I challenge some of those guys. I feel super comfortable and challenging. Trust me, if you would open a newsletter, you would see that I'm not doing that anymore. But thank you for still sending in your support. I know you love me. You just believe in me. So yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in all that, right, you get into the whole idea, to start to develop a budget or a plan, and then you can really assess, is our support level as a family or me as an individual sufficient to cover our needs, which are your salary, your benefits, your savings, and your ministry expenses. So many missionaries neglect the saving, the retirement savings. Maybe it's not biblical to retire. You get into those kind of things. You feel guilty asking a donor to fund you, and then having some of that go to your savings through your 403B. If you are honest with your donors about where their money is going, they can make that decision, and they can decide, okay, I can't support John anymore because he's putting too much in his savings. I have donors who ask me specifically, they're in the same age group I am, and the reality is we're closer to death than we are birth now. And they want to know that my wife and I are not going to be eating cat food and still calling on them at 80 to say, hey, I know we're retired now, but can you still support us? Because we've not put anything away. It's important to be totally transparent and honest, and really considering the worker is worthy of his wage, and to be responsible and a good steward includes that preparation phase for post-ministry. Hopefully we're never really post-ministry, but post, collecting income ministry.
Right. Good word. Man, you're full of good information. I can tell you had some education in this prior to you and stepping into your role. Speaking of your role, part of the reason I think you're just so knowledgeable on this topic is, of course, you had some business and financial training long before you had a clear vocational call to ministry, but you had the opportunity, I know, to oversee and work with a handful of people, and oversee a bunch of different people with their support. And how long have you been in that role now?
Yeah, I would say over the last 5 years, I've been working very closely at a monthly level of observing, and then coaching, and then assisting and building out a coaching group for MPD at the field level of our ministry.
Okay. All right. Well, Mac, I call you Mac. Obviously, your full name is awesome. It's MacGregor Magruder. I wish my name was half as cool as yours, but it's not. So I'll just move on. But you brought a lot of good information, and I think some good warning signs for people. And as we kind of wrap up, let me ask you this: somebody's in listening to this, and some things we're talking about, they might be ticking their boxes. They might go, "Oh, yeah, that's me. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, that's me too. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's also me." And speak, if you would, just briefly, some words of encouragement and wisdom, particularly to the people who might be not quite fully funded, and let's just assume they've been in ministry for a while, and they're realizing as they look at their financial stress test, they're feeling like they just failed that test. What would be some words of wisdom and encouragement you could leave with them before we wrap up our conversation today?
Man, I would say if somebody was feeling anxiety around their personal finances, their ministry finances, where they are in MPD, that is so normal. That is, I think, the normal, right? Most people in the U.S. today, and I imagine Europe, I imagine Latin America, I know for a fact in Kenya and much of Asia, are in some sort of financial stress, right? People talk about it all the time. It's all the time on the media that people are unprepared. Nobody's putting money away. People have too much. Now it's college debt is astronomical, and we're even seeing people unable to respond to a call to missions because their college debt is so huge, unsecured, just massive amounts of loans out there. So it's nothing to be like I can't bring up my own stress with anybody because that makes me weird. No, it makes you normal. Yeah. The weird thing is being aware of your finances in a way that's all lined out. So that is the unusual position. So if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling negative, if this conversation has actually put you in a worse state of mind than you were before you logged in to listen to the podcast, don't just ignore this. This is just real stuff, man. This is just the way the world is. And just don't hesitate to reach out, ask around. If you observe, don't look for your friend that drives the nicest car and has the nicest house. He probably has less financial savvy than you think. Look for somebody who you can just approach. If you're in a mission organization that has a care team, certainly they know somebody within the organization. Reach out to your home church. Just look for somebody you admire. One of your donors is going to be the right person to come alongside you and even start to coach you. And certainly, you Google it, just Dave Ramsey, Crown Financial Ministries, Compass Ministries. Mm-hmm. There's a number of these outfits out there that are doing great stuff. It's inexpensive to get started, and you can, take a 10, 12-week study, and it's not like massive amounts of study as you remember from your time. And it's just life-changing.
Yes.
So I'd be all about it. I'd be absolutely all about just self-assessment, getting on the same page with your family. What does money mean to us? Is it opportunity to serve God? Is it safety and security, which can become an unhealthy side of it as well? So you just have to be on the same page, communicate with your spouse, communicate with somebody who can walk alongside you through the process. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. No. Your passion was ministry. Your passion was spreading the gospel. Your passion was loving Jesus and then learning to love your neighbor. It wasn't going to economics class or finance class or learning how to use Quicken to track your budget. Those are things that nerds like me actually like, but your calling as a field worker was to Jesus. And so, the Bible's full of good, great, wonderful, direct advice on how to be good stewards, but that's not necessarily what you probably have picked out before because it just wasn't, your interest zone. So it's nothing to be embarrassed about or ashamed about. Please, just reach out to folks and ask around and see who's good at this stuff and who's willing to walk with you. And it's just simple corrections to get a handle on spending and decide, hey, we need to raise more support. Then, hey, God, help me raise more support. Donors, folks, guess what? Our family's growing. Our ministry is growing. Our expenses are increasing. And in order to do this healthy for the long term and really impact the kingdom, hey, let's increase. Let's connect me with new donors. And who do you know that would love to know about our ministry? Man, this is easy stuff. And God is going to keep just trudging along with you. He's done it this long. Yeah. He's going to keep going. Yeah.
Well, good word, my friend. Well, I think one of the things that is a big takeaway for the listener is, hey, we want you to be spiritually healthy, vision-driven, fully funded, but sometimes there are stresses with budgeting, and that can be a ministry thing, but that can be a personal thing, and don't shy away from that. Acknowledge that it's there and lean into it. Be more of the type of leader that's kind of happening to whatever that challenge is, instead of letting that challenge dictate and happen to you, and be the thing that turns you into being a budget-driven minister and family person rather than a vision-driven person. And that takes some that really takes some focus, and it takes some time. And as MacGregor was saying, that doesn't mean it's an easy thing, but don't sit back and kind of hope things get better, but instead dig in and see what God's leading you to, as far as really maybe getting some education, getting some training, getting some focus, getting some help, asking for help. But anyway, well, MacGregor, we're gonna go ahead and close our podcast today. I appreciate the kind of long conversation. This is probably one of our longer podcasts, and I think it's great because I think that there's a density of information that we didn't even really probably scratch the surface of when it comes to financial stress for people that are living and working on support. And so I appreciate your time. I appreciate your willingness to even meet with me. A lot of people don't realize that you and I are in, something like 12 different time zones from each other right now, or something like that. But I do appreciate your willingness to sit down with me, and God bless you, my friend. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thanks, Aaron, and I appreciate your ministry. It's vitally important to the kingdom, and man, keep up the good work. Thank you for what you do.
Thanks for joining us for this episode. We would love to hear your ideas for future content. Please visit supportraisingsolutions.org/feedback to share your thoughts and questions. Also, wherever you download your podcast from, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and come back each week to gain more insight into the process of building and maintaining your personal support team.